Forgot her name. I wasn't the girl I wanted to give it to. Who's the last one? Karen. I said Katie. I froze and forgot. I said Katie. We gotta do that again. Somehow we gotta do that again. I can't lose Karen like that.
Hi everyone, my name's Dimitri and welcome back to DimitriTube. I binged watched Jesse Palmer's season of The Bachelor and we're gonna talk about it. So as always, pound the like, pound the subscribe, and let's dive into it. This is my first time reviewing a whole season in one video, so I'm gonna try it and see how it goes. Jesse Palmer was announced as the new host of The Bachelor. And I know some of y'all are like, who the is that? Jesse Palmer also hosted The Ultimate Surfer last summer, The Proposal in 2018, and he's also an ESPN broadcaster. Yeah, I've never heard of any of those either. Moving on. But before Jesse Palmer did all of those hosting gigs, he was the lead on the 5th season of The Bachelor back in 2004. And to save y'all some time, I watched the entire season for you, and we're gonna talk about everything you need to know. Spoiler alert. I'm about to spoil all of Jesse Palmer's season of The Bachelor, so if you do not want it spoiled, go ahead and click off this video. But honestly, Jesse's season came out 17 years ago, so y'all have had plenty of time to watch it. So if you haven't by now, you're not going to. Also, just one last thing before I get started, I'm gonna be airing short clips of the season throughout this video, and the quality of the clips is probably not very good. But y'all, the season came out in 2004 and the quality just wasn't there yet. What do y'all want me to do? So as always, please pound the like button, pound the subscribe button, and let's get started. Like every other season of The Bachelor, ABC starts off by giving us some background on Jesse Palmer. So Jesse Palmer is Canadian. And personally, I thought it was appalling that ABC would ship the role of Bachelor overseas so soon after the franchise started. Jesse was also a starting quarterback at the University of Florida, which if y'all don't know football, that is a very big deal. And at the time of filming for this season, Jesse was a current quarterback for the New York Giants. Now I did some research and Jesse was actually a backup quarterback, but ABC failed to mention that during the season. And that is going to be very important later on in the video. Remember that. And this actually made a lot of sense because I thought his New York City apartment was kind of small for an NFL quarterback who had been playing for 4 years. Like, this man has a white refrigerator.
Not a white refrigerator. Girl, please put your shoes on. Let's go find you a home.
And before the season started, ABC brought in some of Jesse's NFL buddies and they reviewed some of the women. So I enjoyed this because we got a little bit of insight on what Jesse's type is, but at the same time, the guys were a little harsh.
She looks like a guy on our team. She does. She looks like Nick Grayson. She does. Well, Jesse and Nick are good friends too. Okay, then.
No surprise, ABC's not doing that anymore. And there was actually a huge twist in season 5 of The Bachelor that they had never done before. Jesse brought in his best friend's wife as a contestant so she could spy on all the girls in the house.
If I would help him find his bride. I have trepidations about the experience of being someone I'm not in front of these girls and tricking them into believing that I am there for the same reasons that they are. I'm not 100% convinced I can do it. I just hope for Jesse's sake that I can pull it off.
Now, at first when I was watching the season, I thought ABC purposely did this to shake things up because it is season 5. But I think the real reason they chose to do this is because Jesse is just bad at making decisions, and that is very ironic seeing as he's an NFL quarterback. Now, the show was filmed kind of weird, and it felt more seedy because they hid the identity of the spy until episode 2. Keeping the spy's identity hidden was very unnecessary, and all it did was make the show feel kind of weird, but whatever, moving on. So Jesse Palmer sits down with Chris Harrison and we find out his true intentions on going on The Bachelor.
Gotta ask you the first question that is on everyone's mind. Why are you doing this?
It's difficult sometimes, being a professional athlete, to meet people that are sincerely genuine when you feel that they are judging you based upon your job description. The fact that I have a chance to meet 25 unbelievable women tonight, that when they signed up to do this, they did not know what it is I do, who I am, where I'm from, all these things. That's a very comforting feeling for me because there's so much more to me than just football. Football, again, it's my job, and I take it very seriously. I want to be great at it, and I work very hard at it, but it is really only a small part of who I am and what I'm all about.
So this is interesting because Jesse is under the impression that the women are not going to know who he is or what he does. But a few minutes before this one-on-one with Chris Harrison, one of the contestants said that she looked Jesse up online.
Find out if there's a possible connection. But when I found out The Bachelor was Jesse, I instantly looked him up online and I thought, I lucked out. He's hot. He's very hot.
So yes, this was filmed in 2004, but the internet did exist in 2004. And not only that, most people did have internet by then. So either Jesse is not that bright and didn't think the women on the show would look him up, or he's just not being that genuine. Also, did it not occur to Jesse that one of the women may be into sports or football and possibly could have just known who he was from before? And then later on in the conversation, Jesse Palmer tells Chris Harrison that he wants someone who's not too clingy and can live their own life.
I'm looking for somebody who has their own life. I've had experiences where people kind of get clingy and they all of a sudden become kind of engulfed in my life. I want somebody who has their own life and has their own deal going on, and I want to be able to share their life with them.
Now, this is where the psychological warfare started. Now, anytime some psychological warfare happened on the season, I'm gonna go ahead and use this sound effect. Now, I know that no one is perfect, and I did not expect Jesse Palmer to be perfect, but multiple times he used psychological warfare against these women, and this was the first instance. The purpose of The Bachelor is to get engaged and eventually start a life together. Most of the contestants do not live in New York City. So whoever Jesse chooses, he wants to get engaged, have that woman move to New York City, and have them automatically have their own life in that city as soon as they move there. No, Jesse. Most people cannot move to a brand new place and automatically have a life as soon as they move there. That's not how things work. I know, it's shocking. For this season of The Bachelor, you really do not get to know the women outside of the top 5, but I do have some honorable mentions. They are Julie, the NFL cheerleader, Kristen N, the Thai pop singer, Deshawn,
Are you doing okay? How's everybody?
and Dolores, the Giants fan. So Kristen N just had a really cool job description. I really wish we got to know more about that and about her. And Julie, we're gonna talk a little bit more about her later on in the video. But Dolores, the Giants fan, is the first woman that I do need to talk about. Dolores is a huge Giants fan and possibly a sports fan in general, and Jesse clocked her for that. He sent her home night 1.
I'm a huge football
Are you
fan.
really? I mean, what do you love about football? What is it?
Just, I don't know, just the kind of like being in charge and just like taking the team down the field. Like that to me is just like the agony and the ecstasy of it all.
Dolores caught me off guard a little bit. I'm more interested in learning about Dolores than learning about her ambition to lead a 2-minute drive in a Super Bowl. I'm not interested in meeting someone who is attached to the fact that I play football. I want to find someone that, can fall in love with me for who I am.
So I had 2 big issues with this. First, Jesse, playing football is a huge part of your life. You're a backup quarterback for the NFL. So wouldn't you want a partner who at least has a slight interest in that? Second thing, Jesse is very much assuming that a woman cannot be into sports or football. If any of the women bring that up, then they only want him because he's an NFL player. And that is just conceited as hell. Jesse, newsflash, there are some women out there who are just genuinely interested in sports. But it gets better. When Jesse first meets the women, he asks all the right questions.
Where do you guys see yourselves 5-10 years from now?
I'd like to be married.
The is this an interview or a date?
I want to have a big family. I want to have a lot of kids.
do you want to have?
At least 3 or 4, I think.
Why do you love children so much?
I love kids. Do you want to have kids?
Absolutely. I want to have like 100.
You want to have 100 kids? I was thinking
big
like
family.
105.
Why is this man asking about kids on the first date? Soon into the first episode, it becomes very clear that either Jesse Palmer is not comfortable dating while famous, or he just has absolutely nothing to talk about with these women outside of football. But in Jesse's defense, I will say his season of The Bachelor is way different from the Bachelor seasons we're seeing now because Jesse Palmer is famous on his own, whereas now all of the Bachelors are famous for being on The Bachelor, whereas Jesse was famous for football. And because of that, the pick-me's were in full swing this season. A lot of these girls were thirsty as for an NFL quarterback. Now, if you are not familiar with what a pick-me is A woman that is willing to do anything for male approval. She will embarrass or throw other women under the bus to achieve this goal. The unfortunate thing about a pick-me is usually the men they are trying to seek approval from are of poor quality and treat women badly, leaving little real benefit for the pick-me. And you see it right from the jump when Jesse Palmer says the wrong name during the rose ceremony.
Katie.
Most definitely. I answered already.
Thank you.
Okay, so Jesse Palmer gives the rose to the wrong contestant. He says Katie, but he meant to say Karen. And then after that, Jesse is stressing out and talking to Chris Harrison for like 10 minutes trying to decide what to do next.
I forgot her name. I wasn't the girl I wanted to give it to. It was the last one, Karen. I said Katie. I froze and forgot. I said Katie. We gotta do that again. Somehow we gotta do that again. I can't lose Karen like that.
And they're coming to the conclusion that Jesse needs to take the rose back and just apologize to Katie.
It's gonna seem like such a jerk thing to do and somehow explain, you know what, I made a mistake. I'm so sorry about this. That rose is intended for Karen. I have to ask for a rose back.
But that's clearly going to be very embarrassing and very hurtful towards Katie, so they really don't want to do that. And the entire time this is happening, I'm just thinking, why doesn't production just give Jesse another rose? So after a few more minutes of stressing with Chris Harrison, production ends up giving Jesse another rose. But they also decide they're gonna tell Katie that the rose was not intended for her, but if she wants to keep the rose and stay in the competition, she can.
Katie, I accidentally called out the wrong name, giving that last rose. But I would like to extend to you the option of staying. And I'm new at this. I was getting a chance to know all of you tonight. And I would love to extend to you the option of staying. Who knows? I'd love to get a chance to get to know you better. And I'm leaving it up to you if you would like to stay.
And that was really confusing for me because they didn't have to tell Katie the rose was an accident at all. They could have just not said anything. So they give Katie the option to stay, and this is what happens.
I'll stay and see how things go. Sure. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Why not?
I'm so sorry.
It's all right.
Jesse is very much offering you a pity rose, and you are over the moon to take it. Not only did Jesse not remember her name, he just admitted that he was gonna eliminate her. And on top of that, production completely embarrassed her as well. This is straight up pick me energy. Y'all, Katie just wanted to be picked so bad. But then the next episode, they're on a group date. She gets a one-on-one with Jesse Palmer, but it's basically a pity one-on-one, and then she gets eliminated not too long after that. And speaking of eliminations, there is one more woman I want to talk about before we get started with the top 5 women, Julie. Now, Julie is an NFL cheerleader, and out of all the contestants, she would probably understand his lifestyle more than any of the other contestants, but of course she gets eliminated on episode 3. Okay, now this brings me to the first woman in the top 5 that I do want to talk about. Her name is Trish. Trish got the first impression rose, and she was honestly the star of the season. Without her, the season would have been boring. And personally, I thought she was everything.
Because I'm a gold digging, money grubbing.
Trish is a model from Fort Lauderdale, and instead of ABC and Jesse Palmer giving her the first impression rose, they might as well have just put a target on her back. Because after she got that rose, the girls in the house hated her. And at one point, she was just innocently tanning in her thong bikini, and the girls were so mad.
I decided to change bathing suits and put my thong on so I can be all tan and pretty for my one-on-one date with Jesse. Sorry if I offend anyone with my nice white naked hanging out.
When Trish came out and she was wearing her thong, I honestly felt like I was gonna throw up.
I'm just not a big fan of butts. But I mean, I don't know why she has to be naked all the time and obnoxious.
Now, Trish was different from the rest of the top 5 for mainly 3 reasons. First, she's brunette, and I'm sure y'all know the classic tale of blondes versus brunettes. 2, she's unsure if she wants kids and she would put more focus on herself, and a lot of the other girls in the house viewed her as selfish. And 3rd, remember how I said earlier in this review, this season is kind of different from more recent seasons of The Bachelor because Jesse was famous from football and not from being The Bachelor? Well, Trish was one of the only women who was not fangirling over Jesse, and she very much treated him like a regular person that she was dating. And lastly, this is just my personal opinion, but I thought Jesse was most attracted to Trish out of all of the women, and I thought they had the most chemistry. So while Jesse and Trish are on their first one-on-one date, Trish asks Jesse why he decided to be The Bachelor. Jesse responds and says he's been single for a few years and seasons now, and he's envious of the other players with their wives and families. Now this is psychological warfare. Jesse keeps saying that there's more to him than football, but when asked why he wanted to be The Bachelor, he says he wants someone to be there for him after his football games finish. Now, Jesse does not want people to judge him based on football, so for the first group date, guess what he does? Schedules a good old game of football. Now, the juiciest part about this date was after the football game when the women confront him and ask him questions. And this was probably the only time throughout the entire season that the women were asking Jesse legitimate questions. And one of the women asks, in an interview, you said you did not want to get married until you were 30 years old, and then asks him to explain.
For the last 2.5 years, yeah, I've been single and I've been playing the field and I've done that. You know what? And it's been great. And, I've had a lot of fun. I really have. And you know what? There's something about waking up and there's a stranger looking at you and you're just thinking, it was a great idea last night, but what am I doing?
So you be f***ing random groupies? So later on, Tara, who makes top 2 by the way, asks Jesse about these random faces.
What about the whole comment about, I'm tired of waking up to a random face? Is that really the way that you are, or you're completely changing for this?
What I meant by that whole thing was that I haven't done it now for a while because I've been trying to find somebody to spend the rest of my life with, and I'm really sincerely looking for that, and I want to find that, and I want to fall in love.
So when they were filming, Jesse was 25 years old, and he got drafted to the NFL when he was 22. That's only 3 years, so it couldn't have been that long ago. And not only that, he was the QB at University of Florida. I'm sure he had groupies there too. Now here, yet again, is another example of all the pick-me energy from this season. Literally, all of the women were cool with that and let it go, except for Christy, the medical student, who ended up leaving because of those statements. And then after Christy leaves, Jesse says,
part of me maybe thinks Christy's being a little premature and she just kind of already decided in her head that, hey, I'm not the one. And to be honest, I'm upset.
It's clear to me that Jesse rarely gets rejected. And Jesse said that her decision was premature, but at the same time, Jesse has to make decisions quickly too. So by eliminating herself, she made it easier for him. Now, while Jesse was getting roasted at this group date, back at the house, the women were playing a game of Never Have I Ever, and they got into some things, and we found out some interesting information about Trish.
Okay, I've never cheated on a boyfriend. I've never had a one-night stand where I've never talked to the guy ever again. I've never had.
By the end of the night, y'all are not gonna like me very much. I've never had sex with more than one person in a day. I've never had sex with more people than I can count on one hand.
Oh,
Trish, did you just drink?
have you ever slept with a married man?
Yes. I confess that? No, I did. But it's not like it was the guy down the street or someone I would ever see again.
So then after that, the spy is revealed. It's Jenny S. Let's talk about Jenny S. Jenny is worse than a snitch. She's a rat. And I don't like snitches either, but at least if you're a snitch, you're getting compensated. But Jenny wasn't even getting compensated, so it's worse. And keep in mind, y'all, this was before Instagram, so it's not like she was getting Instagram fame or anything for doing this. Even after watching the entire season, I still don't fully understand why she agreed to do this. Like, yeah, you get to be on TV, but is being on TV like that important to you? that you have to become a rat? After it was revealed that Jenny S was the spy, Jesse defends her.
I hope that you all can see how important this is to me. And I hope that you guys can see that Jenny's intentions were really honorable.
Jesse chose a friend to spy on all of his girlfriends and to bring him back information. That is terrible. And for some reason, Jesse said it was the honorable thing. Where is the honor in that? Also, where is the trust? For all of you watching this video, if your boyfriend is spying on you behind your back, that is a huge red flag. And what makes it even worse is that all of the contestants were cool with it, except Trish. The girls wanted Jesse to pick them so bad that they forgave the fact that he was spying on them behind their back. If that's not pick me energy, I don't know what is. So Trish was not mad that the girls were spying, but Trish claimed that some of the girls were embellishing the stories that they were telling about her to Jesse. And later on in the season, we found out this was true. Jenny S, the rat, was embellishing a lot of the stories that she was telling to Jesse. Next, Jenny S chose favorites. She had favorites in the house. Now, if you're ever a contestant on this show, you spend way more time with the other contestants than you do the lead. And the other contestants become your friends. And Jenny S became friends with a lot of the girls in the house, and she ended up choosing her favorites, which were Susie and Tara. Now, if you're gonna be a spy in the house, I think you should only tell Jesse about the red flags that you see in the house, but Jenny took it a step further and chose her favorites and told Jesse who she thought that he would be good with. And it worked because Susie made it to top 5 and Tara made it to top 2. Now, it was not clear whether Jesse was making his own decisions or whether he was just going by whatever the spy said, because all of Jesse's decisions reflected what the spy said except Trish, who Jesse ended up keeping Trish until top 4. Jenny S really should have stayed neutral when interacting with all the other women in the house, but she didn't. And she hated on Trish just like all the other women in the house. And of course, she's a blonde and ended up bandwagoning with all the other blondes in the house and hating on Trish.
The things that she says, the things that come out of her mouth are so hurtful and hateful and the worst things I've ever heard. Okay, I love you, but if you ever marry a woman like that, I would not be able to be your friend.
Jenny dropped a bomb on me when she talked to me about Trish.
Okay, so now on to the women. But before I dive into that, if you've made it this far in the video, please go ahead and pound that like button. I'm a growing YouTuber and the likes definitely help me out, so if you could pound that like button, I would greatly appreciate it. Earlier in this video, I mentioned that the majority of Jesse Palmer's season revolved around the top 5 women. So when I say the women, I mean the top 5, and that's what I'm about to talk about. The first 2 women I want to talk about are Susie and Karen, the biggest pick-me's of the entire season. So Susie very much acted like a fan meeting a celebrity. But in Susie's defense, I saw the most connection between Jesse and Trish, but after Jesse and Trish, I thought Jesse and Susie had the most connection. Also, Susie was one of the biggest shamers in the house towards Trish.
By the way, Jesse, I'm sorry I forgot to tell you, I'm a gold digger. I'm a hooker, but just smarter, and I like to sleep with married men.
But when the girls were playing Never Have I Ever, the girls were asking Trish this information about her history, and Trish told the truth. And Susie just did not like what she heard, and she used it against Trish. So then fast forward to the Women Tell All, and Susie tells Trish, you didn't have to volunteer this information. So Susie was basically telling Trish that instead of telling the truth, Trish should have lied. And Celeste summed up my whole feelings on this situation perfectly during the Women Tell All.
You know what? I didn't get to know all your dirty laundry. I wasn't in the house for very long, but what I did get to know
You do now.
You were pretty well-spoken, one of the more intelligent people in the house. You were more experienced. You weren't delusional about marriage and about Jesse and about who he might be. You were being asked questions and you were answering them, and it made middle America uncomfortable sometimes.
Yes.
So what good
I
does it
can't
do?
help that. You know, I'm sorry if, I made people uncomfortable, but again, it goes back to the fact of if you don't like the answer, don't ask the question. I owned up to everything that, was brought to his attention. Absolutely, I did those things.
Celeste was eliminated early, but I really like that she brought this to the tell-all. And I totally agreed with Celeste. Susie, if you didn't want that information, you shouldn't have asked for it. Okay, next we're moving on to Karen. I don't really have much to say about Karen, but after the rat was revealed, she said,
I want you guys to know that it was being done for the right reason.
Honestly, I would do the exact same thing in your shoes.
You would?
Yep. In a heartbeat.
Jenny has given me a lot of insight into a lot of different things. Both good.
I just feel like Karen wanted to be chose so bad. And like I said earlier in the video, I don't think it was right for Jesse to pick a spy and then have them spy on all the women. I don't think that was right. But Karen said if she was in his shoes, she would have did it too. And when Karen gets eliminated, she gives Jesse Palmer a warning.
I'm just going to tell you that be very careful of one of the women here. You have 3 phenomenal women here. One that's not out for you. Just be careful. Follow your gut.
Thank you. I will. Okay. Thank you so much.
Of course.
Ugh, typical Karen move. Next, we're moving on to Mandy. I really don't have much to say about Mandy, but it made absolutely no sense why she made it to top 3 over Trish. So Mandy is a former pageant queen. During Hometowns, Jesse Palmer said that Mandy is giving him pageant answers, and he said he does not think she's being real. And also during Hometowns, Jesse accuses her of only wanting him because he's the Bachelor and because he's a quarterback. And on top of that, Jesse didn't even like her family. And they didn't even bring back Mandy for the after the final rose, but they brought back Trish. The only conclusion that I can think of as to why Mandy made top 3 is because Trish could not make top 4 because if she did, she wouldn't have been at the Women Tell All. And the Women Tell All was all about Trish. So if she wasn't there, they wouldn't have had anything to talk about. Okay, so next we have Trish. Trish was eliminated after Hometown, so she basically got 4th place. And sidebar, the women got wasted their last night in the house before Hometowns.
Let's have the keg. We knew it was our last night in the house, so we just let loose and drank a bunch.
1, 2, 3. I got the beat. I got the beat. Drink, 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 drink.
This is the first season on the show that I've seen where the women wild out that hard. So after Trish is eliminated, Jesse Palmer is having his fantasy suite date dinner with Mandy, and Trish crashes the dinner and tries to win back Jesse's heart.
The door opens up, it's Trish. I just thought to myself, oh my God, I might have a stalker.
Could you give me a moment of your time?
Absolutely.
Please.
Sure. May I do mine?
No, not at all.
Now, yet again, Trish is the star of the show. Keep in mind, y'all, production had to allow Trish to do this. She couldn't just crash the dinner. Like, production had to clear it first. It was clear that Trish brought a lot to the show because if she didn't, they wouldn't have let her come back. Also, Jesse traveled for all of the fantasy suite dates, so clearly someone had to tell Trish where he was at so she could crash the dinner. Trish tried to get Jesse Palmer back, but at that point, he just seemed like he was ready to move on, and it doesn't work. But I do think he made the wrong decision because out of everyone in the top 4, Jesse and Trish had the most connection. And then we make it to the top 2, Tara and Jessica B. But before we dive into them, I do need to talk about Jesse again real quick. I need to drag him. So on episode 1, Jesse said, I normally don't make out on the first date.
I have to tell you, I usually don't make out on the first date.
Really?
Mm-hmm. You were a little bit of an exception.
And here we go again with the psychological warfare. He made out with Trish, Susie, Mandy, and Tara all on the first date. So that is clearly a lie. Next, the girls shamed Trish most of the season. But Jesse Palmer took Mandy, Tara, and Jessica B to the fantasy suites all in 1 week. Why are we not shaming Jesse Palmer? I guess if Trish does it, it's not okay. But if Jesse Palmer does it, it is okay. And what makes it worse is this man initially said, I'm done waking up to the random faces.
You know what? There's something about waking up and there's a stranger looking at you, and you're just thinking, it was a great idea last night, but what am I doing?
But I guess in this instance, these faces are more familiar. Next, Jesse could not decide between Jessica B and Tara. And it appeared very much like he was just bad at making decisions, which is ironic because he's an NFL quarterback. So Jesse consults with his parents, his friends, and he even consults with the rat, Jenny S. Tara is a blonde 21-year-old contractor from Oklahoma, and Jessica B is a blonde 21-year-old law student from Huntington Beach, California. Now these two girls, they both got along, they both shame Trish about the same, but Tara's personality was just a little more feisty. Not like too feisty, but just slightly more feisty.
Hey, don't blame anything else on Jenny. You know you don't deserve to be here.
After the ceremony, Tara comes up to me and says that I know that I didn't deserve a rose and that I shouldn't be here. I think Tara is a spoiled who has a lot of issues. She may be beautiful on the outside, but she is completely just insecure and ugly on the inside.
A few things did happen that led up to his decision. First, I'll talk about Jessica. Jesse was having a one-on-one with Jessica B, and he says,
You know, you're at a football game with you know, I'm playing, and it's in New York City, and 75,000 people are booing me.
Who cares? Like I think nobody else's opinion matters to me.
Again, with the psychological warfare. What the f? At the beginning of the season, Jesse said that he wanted someone who wants him for him and not for football. But now she's asking Jessica B how she would react at a football game. At this point in the show, it became crystal clear to me that Jesse Palmer was uncomfortable with his fame and he wasn't exactly sure what he wanted from a partner. Next, while Jesse was on his fantasy suite date with Jessica B, he said one of his biggest worries was that Jessica B was 21 years old and that she's too young. Now, I guess something about Jessica B just seemed a little immature. From watching the show, you couldn't really tell what it was, but it must have been something that we just couldn't see on camera. And just one last thing with Jessica B, during their fantasy suite date, Jesse tells her something huge.
I'm going to tell you something, and I'm just going to be honest with you. I'm just going to tell you this, and I don't know if I should be doing this.
Go ahead.
I'm just going to tell you. I've had an incredible time with you today. And just, I think about our future together, and the possibility of that. And I you know, there are days where I don't see any horizon. It just goes on forever. In saying that, I'm falling in love with you. I am. I'm falling in love with somebody else also.
And then after that conversation, they still go to the fantasy suite. Again with the pick-me energy. This man just told you that he was falling in love with someone else, and you still decide to go to the fantasy suite with him. Me personally, I would have passed. But you know, these girls just wanted to be chose so bad. Okay, now on to Tara. So Tara was previously engaged at some point, but ended up breaking off the engagement. But at one point, Jesse asks Tara about her previous engagement, and in my head, I just thought, what does that have to do with you? Next thing I want to mention, Tara and Jesse get into a small argument during the fantasy suite dates because Jesse does not believe that Tara is falling in love with him. And Tara responds and says,
I definitely know that I'm starting to fall for you. And it's strange because I don't think that I've really been able to say that very often in my life.
I was like, girl, you are 21 years old. Realistically, how many times could you have said that? It really wasn't convincing for me. Anyways, after all of that, Jesse miraculously makes his decision within the last 6 hours. Jesse chooses Jessica B. And Jesse doesn't end up proposing to Jessica B, but he gives her a first-class ticket to New York City. But then right after, Jesse has to break up with Tara, and Jessica B casually watches from the window.
How are you feeling?
You can just give me a couple of minutes.
And finally, we have the after the final rose. So in the ATFR, they bring back Trish, of course, because she's most of the storyline, but they don't even bring back Mandy, and she actually made top 3. And during the episode, they bring out Jesse Palmer and Jessica B, and Jessica says,
"You gonna move to New York?"
I'm definitely thinking about it. I've already been out there looking at apartments and checking in a few schools. So we will see.
When you say you've been out there recently, have you been out there to spend time with Jesse? You guys been looking at places together? How's it work?
Jesse and I, we watched the final episode together and been hanging out there for a little while. I don't think we're planning on living together. I think both of our opinions are that it's not a wise decision to live together before marriage.
So Jessica B is from California, and Jesse Palmer wants her to uproot her whole entire life and move across the country to New York City for a man that she is not even engaged to. And on top of that, Jesse doesn't even want to move in together. Like, what? Asking your girlfriend to do that and y'all just started dating is ridiculous. So not surprisingly, they break up 1 month after the show ends. Also, the very next year, Jesse Palmer lost his spot as a backup quarterback because he got cut from the New York Giants. Now remember earlier in the video when I said that Jesse Palmer was a backup quarterback? Now I'm bringing this back up. My conclusion after watching the entire season was that one of the main reasons Jesse Palmer decided to go on this show was because he knew his NFL career was ending soon. But the moment he started looking at engagement rings with Tara and Jessica B, being the Bachelor got way too real for him and he didn't realize what he was actually getting himself into.
My precious, my precious. It's my own. What she should have. No, it's your ring. Came to you. It's yours. No. You love her. She's nice. She loves my stuff.
And that is the end of this season and the end of this review. If you're interested in watching Jesse Palmer's season, just Google Bachelor Archives. That's how I watched it. The website's a little wonky, but it does work. And just one last thing, if you enjoyed this video, please go ahead and pound that like button, pound that subscribe button, and ring that notification bell. I'm a growing YouTuber and I appreciate all the support. So a like and subscribe goes a long way. See you all on the next video. Have a good one. Bye.